All right. This is Dr. Yomi in motion number 827. Today we're going to learn Daf Kuf Zayin in Bava Metzia, and we're going to continue. We're going to speak. It's a Hemshek of the discussion of Dini Chakranusa, of renting property and working it and paying. Usually, it's paid in produce. The agreement is usually that the rent will be paid in what is produced on the land. But sometimes it can be money that is paid, is the rental payment is made. More begins on Daf Kuf Vav Amid Beis. The bottom 6 in the Mishnah, 6 lines up from the bottom. Hamakabel Sode Mechabelo. This is Chakranusa. We'll see, that's what Rashi tells us. We'll see why. Hamakabel Sode Chakranusa Lizaro. So he was makabel the field and rent it, to pay back. The deal was that he would plant siren by barley and he would pay his rent in barley. Lo yizrena chitim. So in a case like that, he cannot switch the crop that was agreed upon. And especially here we see it's chitim. It depletes the land more than siren does. So the owner of the land wouldn't want a crop that will leave him with more depleted land than they had agreed upon. But if they agreed on hitim, which anyway depletes the land a lot, the most, hitim is rena siren. He is allowed to go against their agreement and plant siren barley and pay in barley. That's the Tanakama. However, Mishum ben Gamliel is oiser even to do that. And we'll see in a second why. It's more like going against an agreement. It's more like being just unethical to do something other than what they agreed upon. However, if they agreed on tavua, which is standing grain crops, as opposed to kidneys, beans, or garlic that are not. So if they agreed on tavua, so lo yizrena kidneys, then he can't plant kidneys. Beans. Rashi says because it depletes the land more. So kidney, however, if they agree upon kidneys, so that seems to be the reason according to the Tanakhama that why you can't plant kidneys, because it depletes the land more when they agree on a crop that depletes the land less. However, if they agreed on kidneys, which depletes the land more than tavua, is rana tavua. So then he can plant the crop which depletes the land less, according to the Tanakhama. But there again, Rav Mishum ben Gamliel is oiser. We'll see, which seems to be at the beginning because of ethical reasons, not going against one's word. Zok the Gemara, Amar Rav Chista, my time to Rav Mishum ben Gamliel. Why does Rav Mishum ben Gamliel not allow even to plant a crop which depletes the land less? And for the Gemara, the Chesiv, because we have the pasuk in Spania, and it says, "Shevis Yisrael lo yasu avla, lo yidabru kozov, v'lo yimotze b'fihem lashon tarmis." In other words, what they say they should do. They shouldn't say things and not the kind what they say, and that seems to be the reasoning, according to Rav Chista, Rav Mishum ben Gamliel, because of this pasuk, Sheris Yisrael Yasu Avla V'lo Yidabru Kozov V'lo Yimotze B'fihem Lashon Tarmis. Correct the Gemara, we have a brisa that seems to imply, according to Rav Mishum ben Gamliel, that that's not the reason for why he doesn't allow to switch the crop into a crop that depletes the land less. Meisvei Hamagvas Purim lePurim. If there's a collection, a tzedakah collection for Purim, to raise tzedakah for the anim, for their Purim Suda and their other needs for Purim, or for matnas aniyim. So that money, the aim medaktikin b'davar with Purim. The aim medaktikin b'davar, meaning the aim medaktikin b'davar means that we don't make cheshbonos on how much the aniyim in that town need for Purim, and give them that amount, and to save the rest for other aniyim, for other usage. No, we buy them a big, huge Suda, and it's all for Purim. That's called Emadaktikin, even though they really don't need that much for Purim. But we give them, it all goes for Purim, since that's what it was originally collected for. There we see the concept of not going against what was originally designated for certain monies. And even so far as that the oni who receives the money can't use it for anything other than for Purim, because that's what people raised the money, donated the money for, was for their Purim needs. So they themselves, the onim themselves, are not allowed to use the money for anything other than Purim needs. Unless all the people of the city council agree that they can switch the use of that money. Rabbi Yaakov, that was the sheet of Rabbi Yaakov, but Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, in that case, he allows them to use the money for, Rashi says the top line, Rashi on Kuf Zayin, says, Mekel Afagav Dimishani, even though they'll change from the usage of the money. Lo Sovar, it doesn't matter. To Makpid, Lo Sovar, to Makpid Inish Mide de Lo Kosarbo, that to switch, nobody really lost over here. People don't really care what he used the money for. And so he's Mekel, and so he allows them to use the money, I guess, for their own needs. And possibly, maybe he seems like that's what it's going. Right, that's what it's going on. The Oni should be able to use it for other than Purim needs. So we see Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel seems to be making that it's not a problem to go against what was originally designated, what a person originally intended should be. If a person changes and there's no losses, it's mutter to be makel and to shift. So here in our Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, it doesn't seem like that he's going according to the reason that a person shouldn't change from his word. If there's no loss, the person is really gaining. He's getting a better crop. He's getting his same rental payment in value, and his field at the same time is being depleted less. So then there shouldn't be a problem. So then what's the reasoning of why Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel in our Mishnah does not allow to switch if they agreed on Chita, doesn't allow them to switch to barley even. So Abaye answers, Omar Abaye, time of the Rabbi Shimon, the reason for Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel in our Mishnah would be according to Rabba bar Nachmani. Kidamar. Mar is Rabba bar Nachmani. It's called Mar. The second line down in Rashi's the Omar Mar, Rabba bar Nachmani, Rabbe Abaye. That was the Rebbe of Abaye, the Rabba Gidlu Bebeso. He raised Abaye in his house. Kidamar. Tomamar, what did Rabba bar Nachmani tell us? Tomamar, Haiman, the Nicha Le, the Titavur, Aryeh. So a person who wants to ruin his field, what does he do? Rizora Shasa Chita B'Shasa Sorai. All he has to do is 1 year he should plant wheat, and then the next year he should switch and plant barley. Or 1 year you should plant with the rows going one direction, Shasa Shesi, Shasa Erev. And the next year just switch the rows to go in a different direction. That'll ruin the field. The low almond that'll ruin the field like this, Eladilo Kori Vitani. The only time it ruins the field is if the person doesn't plow twice, meaning plow. The first year plow after he's done with the wheat, let's say, he plows, and then before he goes to the Zoreya, the barley, he would plow before the Zoreya, then it won't affect the land, the fact that he is switching the crops or switching their direction. So then, right, about Kari Vatani, but if you will plow twice, Leisman, there's no problem with it. So we see that that's the reason for Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel in our Mishnah, why a person can't agree on wheat and switch to barley, because it'll ruin the land. And that was because that's like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel would be going according to the svara of Rabbi Bar Nachmani, which Rabbi Bar Nachmani brought down in the 10 Torahs. That would be his svara. So the Mishnah said, "Tovua lo yizrena kitnius," and vice versa. If they agreed on standing a wheat crop, a grain crop, they should not switch to kitnius because kitnius depletes land more. And so you cannot do that. According to the Tanakama, Masnisin, according to everybody, Masnisin lo Rebbe Yehuda. Masnile, Rebbe Yehuda. So, Le Rabin, there's a brisa that in the name of Rebbe Yehuda was taught to Rabin that he said, Tavua Yizrena Kidneys. If they agreed on a grain crop, then it's not a problem to switch to kidneys, not like our Mishnah. And he answered, what our Mishnah told us that you cannot do that. You cannot agree on Tvua and switch to kidneys because kidneys ruins the land more than Tvua. And you're telling us that you can? Amalei, Lokash is not a problem to what Rabbi Yehuda was telling us, in contrast to our Mishnah, because Lan Bahalahu, one is us in Bava, and one is those in Eretz Yisrael. The soil in Eretz Yisrael is mountainous, it's rocky, and it's dry. And in Bava, it's moist and it's very hydrated, and there's not much you can do to deplete it and to ruin it. Whereas in Eretz Yisrael, where the soil doesn't have a lot of nutrients, it can be depleted quickly. So therefore, in our Mishnah, you cannot do it, where it is in what Rabbi Yehuda was bringing down, it was okay, because there's not much you could do to ruin the soil in Bava. It's right, it has the river, the Euphrates. So Amalei Rabbi Yehuda, so Rashi explains, right, where we are in the narrow lines of Rashi, about 5 lines down. Ha-lan v'ha-lahu maslisan. Our mission is Be'eretz Yisrael Kai. Shehi Makam Hari. It's a mountainous area with sandy, rocky rocks and mountainous soil. V'ika le'mechash l'chosha. Then we have to worry about the land becoming depleted. However, we in Bubble, anan hashta b'Bubble kaiminin. We're now currently in Bubble. Shehi mitzula tavu bebe v'tza'ay amayim, which is very wet, damp soil with a lot of nutrients from the river, which is always the nutrients are resupplied, I guess, because the river brings new nutrients down with it. The ika lemechash, the leg lemechash lehachasha in Bubble at all. The ara hilkach, since we don't have to worry about it, so you can switch back and forth each year, whatever you want to do. Hilkach mishana b'kol makam sheyirtza mikidniyas letavu umetavu lekidniyas. Right. So that would be what he's explaining. However, Rabbi Shimon would maybe be going according to, in our Mishnah, would maybe be talking about Eretz Yisrael also. Something more. Omar Rav Yehuda le Rabin, Rav Nachman, Rabin Achai, Rabin my brother. Hani Tachle Tibei Kitna. These Tachni is like Rashi says Shachlim cress. I guess maybe it's a type of onion. So Rashi says where we are opposite where we are in the Gemara. Shachalim Shekairin Krisin. Hagidilim Beina Pishin. They grow amongst the flax crop. So it's in the flax field, and it harms it. Abraham Mishum Gezel. If a person would take those plants out, which they have value on their own, they would take them, uproot them. They're not over on Gezel because their value is less than the damage they do to the flax crop, and so therefore the owner would be happy, would be nichel with them being taken out. So there's no Gezel on those outbulen. However, if the crest, the tachle, is right on the gavul where the damage that it's doing to the crop, the flax crop is less and they themselves have value. So then the owner of the field would be makpid about them, and it would be gezel if someone would take those. If it's omdos ala gevulin, yesh mishum gezel. Im ukshu lizera. Kitna nami yesh mishum gezel. And if this plant, this cress, had matured to the point where it itself produced seeds, meaning then they've already done their damage to the flax. There's no more damage basically they can do because their roots are fully developed under the ground, I guess, and therefore they do have value. And to pull, they've already done whatever damage they did already. So if someone would pull them out at that stage, they're only taking away from the bailim, and he would be machmid, and therefore even in the middle of the flax field, the bailim would be machmid, and there would be a din of gezel if someone would take it. My time, why? My time, the afseed. What he already lost, he lost. The plant had already developed its roots as much as they would develop, I guess, and they already caused the damage that they will cause. Omar le Rabbi Yehuda le Rabin bar Reb Nachman Rabin Achai. Another eight, some more eight sot. Hani dilai dilech, the dilech dilai. They both, in a case where we would both have fields and orchards with trees, and one would be next to the other. So my trees would be your trees, and your trees would be my trees, because that's the way it was with pardesim orchards that were next to each other. Sometimes a tree, which would be next to the border between the two fields, would really be also partly the other, both people's or one, even though it might look like it's in the border of one field, it could be completely considered the tree of the other field because it goes after the roots under the ground. So sometimes it looks like it's in one person's field and the roots are really all growing in the direction of the other field or in the soil of the other field. They will be considered, that tree is the other person's tree. And sometimes the roots are partly in one field and partly in the other, and therefore the tree will be both of theirs. And sometimes the roots are going under the ground. They're partly in each of the two fields, but the nof with the branches above the ground and the fruits might mostly be drawn towards one of the fields. And that's going to be part of the discussion also. So it says, in this case, both of our field trees like that are sometimes considered both of ours. V'nahu b'nei Metzia, people that have common borders, Ilan hanoita lekan, the tree whose roots are going towards this person's field, that's whose tree it will be. Whoever has the field that the roots went into. Hanoita lekan. And whoever it's noted this, and if sometimes it's noted to the other person's field, something that tree will be the other person's tree. We just said that we're going through different memorot of Rabbi Yehuda the Rabbin, that Amar Rabbi Yehuda the Rabbin bar Nachman, Rabbin Achai, Rabbin my brother, says that Donai Hani Dilach, my trees are your trees, and your trees are my trees. It's that owners of fields that are growing an orchard trees, we describe if the roots are spreading out into both of the fields. So that's the determinant of who owns the tree, is where the roots go. So there can be a tree on one person's field, the roots under the ground are going into the neighbor's field, and the tree can be partially owned by the neighbor, even though the trunk is sitting in another person's field. So no hug b'nei Metzia, so people that have a common border have a minhag that the ilan hanoita lekan, that we look at where the roots are noita to, and we consider that where the roots are, that's whose tree it is. Hanoita lekan, and if it's going the opposite direction, it'll be considered the other person's tree, even if it might not be in his field. Itmar ilan ha'omed al Metzia, a tree which is right on the border. Omar Rab, Hanoite Likan Likan. We look at the roots, and where it goes, that's whose tree it is. Hanoite Likan Likan. This is the name of Rab. Shmuel Omar Holkin. No, we split the tree. If it's right on the border, in other words, what Rab is saying is where the amount of roots on each person's field, that's his percentage ownership in the tree. But Shmuel says if it's right down the middle, we just split it. We split the tree, which seems to be almost the same thing. Rashi says where we are in the Gemara down about 8, 9 lines. The noigu b'nei Metzia, then when it's right on the border, noitin l'kan l'kan, that was Rab Shita. Noitin shiroshin l'sadezu. If the roots are going towards this field, a perus shalel, and that's those perus will be his. Shmuel says we split the perus. So here we see Rab saying that we look at where the roots are going, and we're going to be bringing a brisa, a kasha on Rab. Meizvei ilan ha'omer ala metzah. If you look at a tree which is right on the border, yachloiku, it's a split. Like Shmuel said, which would be, we have a brisa which is a tiyuv to the Rab, which seems to be contradicting Rab's shita that we look at the roots and not just all the parts of the tree which are above the ground. Tiyuv to the Rab. So Shmuel interpreted according to Rav Shita. Tirgma Shmuel libe the Rab. B'mimale kol hametzah kulo. What we're talking about is that the roots underneath are smack in the middle on both sides, and that's why this price is saying yachloka, and even Rav could agree with that. Rashi, where we on the Gemara down about 5 lines. B'mimale kol hametzah shenoitin shroshim l'kan l'kan. I guess it's going. The shroshim are going both directions. That's why Rav would agree that you split it, the perus in this case. So. Kulo. If it's right in the middle, so of course that's Rav Shita. What is the shaila? Rav says when you look at the roots, so if the roots are right in the middle, so then of course he should get half the pairs. More answers, no, we had to teach you this to explain Rav Shita. Lo, tzricha, the tolai tune lechad gisa, because the upper part of the tree, which is has tuna, the load of the tree, the fruits that are on the branches, are noita towards one side more than the other, even though the roots are equal under the ground. So more says, so still pushing. The roots are half and half. Just draw, I guess its understanding is draw a line up from the border, and whoever side the fruits are on, that's who should get the fruits. Rashi, where we on the Gemara down about 6 lines, the tole tune, masa peroisav, the load of the perus on the branches, the anovav in the branches, noitil etzad echad, they're all going to one person's side. So the Gemara says even then, so still we should understand what should be done. Just give whoever side the branches and the fruit are over, he should get those fruits. The Gemara says why? The Gemara says vakati ma'alamemra, it still should be fairly pashit. Ma'alutema, the Gemara says it's not pashit. Ma'alutema de omarlei palu hachi, that he would say the split right there, where if you draw the line up from the Metzia going up, whoever has who's ever on the side, wherever the fruit are hanging towards, he should get all of those fruits. You might have thought that's what that one person will ask for. Kamashman, that we don't split like that. Rather, that would be splitting, like drawing a line up from the Metzia upward. Rather, we can split along the length of the tree, and therefore each neighbor would get an equal amount of the perus. Since the roots are equally divided amongst them, we could split the perus at a different angle, in order to give each field owner the equal amount of fruits, and that's what we're being told. That's what we mean yachlok. Kamashmalan to Amalek that he could tell my chazis to Polegis. Why do you think to split where the Metzia goes up and you get all of the perus? Let's split along the, like let's say it's an oval shape of the tree part, the branches in it where the fruit are hanging is like an oval. Why split like a just split in a way like in the other direction where we're both getting half of the perus? My chazis the Polegis hachi polug hachi split like the other way, and that's what is being learned that they split the perus. Omalei Rabbi Yehuda Rabin Bar Rab Nachman Rabin Achai, another Eitzah, agricultural Eitzah. No tazvin ara dismicha lemasa. Don't buy land for working it close to the city. So Omalei Abba, Omar Rav Huna, because we learned that a person, right, from this person, because we have this memory by Reb Abba, Omar Rav Huna, who said the name of Rav Huna, who said the name of Rav, Omar Rav, that it's aser lo le'odam shiyah moed al soda chaveru b'shasha omedes be'komase. Since Rav told us that a person shouldn't stand by another person's field when the other person's field is filled with good-looking, grown produce and it's looking really good because of ayin hara. So therefore, we see that this din not to have the field near the city where everyone will be looking at it. Because if it's near the city, everybody will be walking by it every day. And then they will be looking at it and there'll be ayin hara. And we see that that's problematic, can cause damage. Just as Rav was telling us that a person shouldn't stand there and look at a person's field while it's filled with good produce. Where it says, Amy, it's not true. That doesn't seem to be the shita of Rav. Rav doesn't learn that a person shouldn't have his field near the city, because we're going to see a limud where Rav seemed to imply that a person should have his field near the city. Why? So true, when it's near the city, there might be ayin hara, but there's another element of having one's field near the city that it's easier to maintain. You can just, when you do harvest the fruit, you can just take it right to your house, and it doesn't, you don't have to transport it so far. Where it says, Amy, Ashkachinu Rabbi Abba l'talmidei the Rav. Rabbi Abba found the talmidim of Rav, and he asked them, Shilas. So Omar Lahu, he said to them, so my Omar Rav the high crowd. What does Rav do with this pasuk? It says, Baruch atah. It's a pasuk in Devarim. Baruch atah be'ir. Baruch atah b'sodeh. Blessed you will be in the city. Blessed you will be in the field. And then he asked them about another pasuk, which is right a few pasukim later. He says, Baruch atah b'bo'echa. Baruch atah b'tzeisecha. Blessed you will be when you in your coming, and blessed you will be in your going. What is Rav? How does Rav learn those two pasukim? So they answered, they told him, Achi Omar Rav, the Baruch atah ba'ir, you will be blessed in the city, means Shei beischo samach lebeis haKnesset. Your house will be close to the shul. You always have a place to daven. Baruch atah b'sodeh, you'll be blessed. You will be blessed. Your field will be blessed. Shiu nichsecha kroivim la'ir. That your nechasim, your fields that you use for parnasa, will be near the city. See, and that's Shita's Rav. That one should have his field near the city. Kasha and Rav. And how does he interpret the next pasuk? Baruch atah b'bo'echa. Blessed you will be in your coming. Shalot timatze ishtecha safik nida b'shas bi'ascha min haderech. When a person, after traveling for parnas, he comes home, he won't find his wife b'safik nida, meaning not knowing if he can be with her or not, and having to ask shilas and find out if she's muter or not. Because then he can't be with her. There's no question he can be with her. At least if it's safek nida, maybe it's a little bit better because it's possible that he will get a heter to be with her. But he should have that bracha. Then when he comes home, his wife is he can be with his wife. And Baruch atah b'tzeisecha, blessed you will be when you leave, and you're leaving. We'll see, Rav interprets it doesn't mean you're leaving. Shi'u mayech kimoischa, that your offspring from your thigh should be like you, meaning they should be tzaddikim like you. That's what it means. Baruch atah b'tzeisecha. That's Rav's shita, but we see that Rav seems to contradict what we said above in the name of Rav. That Rav seemed to give us a reason why a person shouldn't. He was telling him not to buy a field near the town because Rav told us that it's also for people to stand by and look at a well-developed field. And that means that there's that problem of buying hara for fields near the town, so don't do that. But we saw Rav interpreting Baruch atah b'sodeh, that person should have his fields near this town. Kashon Rav. Omar Lahu, so Reb Abba told Talmidim of Rav that this what you're telling me that Rav interprets those psukim. That's not the way Rabbi Yochanan interprets those psukim. Rabbi Yochanan lo Omar Havi. Rabbi Yochanan didn't learn those psukim the same way. Ela Baruch atah be'ir, according to Rabbi Yochanan, means shi'ei beis akisei samach l'shulchancha, that the outhouse that people used then didn't have private plumbing, indoor plumbing, and they had to. So it should be close to the your shulchan. Rashi says, why does it say the beis akisei close to your shulchan? Because person, when they were noheg before they would eat, if they had to make, they would make before they eat, so that they would clean up. Rashi says, where we are in the Gemara, one line down, samach l'shulchancha, that the beis akisei should be near where you eat, so they shouldn't be too difficult for you to clean yourself out when it's time, when a person should be cleaning themselves out for health reasons, because otherwise he will just hold himself in and it'll be unhealthy. So for example, if he has to make before eating, and let's see, Rashi says, samach l'shulchancha, kloimar samach lebeischa, should be near your house, shelo titzdarich larchik b'soda, so you shouldn't have to go far away to go and use the outhouse. Behind the nokat shulchancha, why did they said that it should be near your, really means near your house, but why did they say near your table where you eat? So a person can check himself before he goes to eat if he needs to make. And after he eats, Shabbos, it says in Shabbos, the time we learn in a brisa, whoever has to make, and he doesn't make, and he eats when he was supposed to make. It's like lighting a fire in a fireplace or a fire without clearing out all the ash. There's no ventilation, there's no draft, the flame doesn't flow nicely. So it doesn't digest well. Why did they make after the chila? Because the new food was pushing on the old digested food to get it out. That he's eating now, that which was digested in his stomach, in his intestines. And if he has to go far, he'll probably just hold himself in both cases. So he'll hold himself in. He'll come to the problem of droikan. Right. So that's going to Rabbi Yochanan, what it means, Baruch atah bo'ir, having the basic kisei near one's house. And Baruch atah b'soda, going to Rabbi Yochanan, what does that mean? Shi'u nechsecha mishuloshim, meaning that your fields where you grow crops, you should just divide your crops. Don't have all the same crop. Have a few different crops because their different conditions affect different crops, and different crops are sensitive to different conditions. So if there's cold weather or windy, or there's certain types of insects, they might affect one and they'll leave the other ones. So the person, it's like a way of preserving his capital, his investment, by doing that. Shlish b'tavua, have a shlish of standing grain crops. Shlish b'zeisim, have some zeisim. Shlish b'gefanim, and shlish in grapes. So then Rabbi Yochanan interpreted the second pasuk, Baruch atah b'boecha, and you're coming, Baruch atah b'tzeisecha, sh'teheitze yitzioscha min ha'olam ki b'oscha la'olam. That when a person leaves this world, it should be the same as when he came in. Ma b'oscha la'olam below chet. A person came into this world without any chet. So so he should leave the world without chet. So there we see that it is a kasha on Rav, because like we said before, Rav was implying that the person should not buy a field near the city, and then interpreting those pasukim, seeing that Rav Shita seemed to be that a person should have fields near the city. Gemara says, "Lo kasha, it's not a kasha on Rav. Ha demehadar le shur verikta, verikita. Hadalo mahadar le shur verikita." That in the case where Rav was implying that a person shouldn't buy a field near the city because he wasn't putting up a wall or a fence around it. So then everyone would look at it. But if you had a wall or a fence blocking everyone's view to the nice crops that you have growing, then it's better to have it near your house. Then it's easier to when you harvest to bring it to your house. And so it's not a kashan Rav. Now the Gemara goes and it's darshins another pasuk. The pasuk is in Devarim. It says, "The Hasir Hashem Mimcha Kol Choyle." Person will take off all sickness from you, Chol Madbe Mitzrayim, and all that which affected Mitzrayim, Haroyim, all the bad things that happened to Mitzrayim. Asher Yodato Lo Yisimam Bach, they won't put them on you. Umisonam Bechol Sonecha, he'll put these bad things and sicknesses on all of your enemies. So that's the pasuk. So Omar Rav, what is that? What is it called? Choyle? What is the cause basically of all sickness? Zu ayin. That's the ayin hara. That's the makabepatish, what ultimately causes all sicknesses. And Rav is learning that because that's his he goes according to his shita. Rav the timing. The Rab Salik Lebe Kavre, he went up to the basic forest. Why? Because then they used to, maybe still nowadays also, they used to make the basic forest high up on a mound, on a hill. And when the rain comes, it doesn't well up in the valley, in the lower parts, and like wash out or wash up the kfarim, the bodies that are under the ground, and rot them more. Maybe it would rot them more. There's very moist soil. And so they put them on high ground. So he went up to basic forest, Oben Mad Oben, and he did what he did. Rashi says, what did he do? Because he knew 3 lines down. Oben Mad Oben, Yudea Hayalachoish Al HaKvoros. He knew how to do incantations in the graveyard. Lulahabin Al Kol Keber Bekeber, Ezo Misa Mace. He could therefore tell each Keber why he died, how he died. Im meis bismano ve'im be'ayin ra. If he died natural death in its time, or if he died early because of ayin ra. So he went and he did that. So Omar, he said, Tishin b'teisha ba'ayin ra. He said that 99% of all the people that died early because of ayin ra. People putting an eye on them, and therefore they had mishpat on them and took them early. The echad b'derech eretz, 1 out of 100 would die at the right time, at the end. The Shmuel Omar, Shmuel learned that the kol choyle, the main makabepatish for all sickness, is not ayin ra, rather zeh ruach, the winds that blows. Each person is sensitive to different winds. Rashi says in the first narrow line of Rashi, Akol beruach. No, that's later. So he says it's the wind. Shmuel, the time is Shmuel's going according to his reasoning in the Gemara. So Omar Shmuel Hakol beruach. Shmuel says all sicknesses are caused from the ruach, and Rashi on the first narrow line of Rashi explains Kol beruach. Kol chaloyim, all sicknesses, the toitzois, misa, and ultimate death. Al neshivas haruach comes from the different ruchos, winds that are blowing. The boyin. Neshivas haruach, boyin hakol. Everything comes because of the winds that are blowing. The fi hasha, according to the times, v'ha'adam, and the person. Yesh l'chol adam sheruach ploini kashalo. Some person, it's hard for them, a certain wind blowing from a certain side. They will be shopped only in a certain time period of the year, and that's what really kills them. or makes him sick. The Lishmuel Ha'ika Harugi Malchus. What does Shmuel do about the fact that some people are killed by other causes like sword and different cuts and lacerations and wounds? So what does he do there? Hanach Nami, that's also the winds, because even with a cut, a person, if the winds didn't blow and cause damage, there's certain, in many cases, I guess, the remedies could have been used and could have healed them, but because the wind got into the wound, it just really brought the person down. Hanach Nami, he loves Zika, if it wasn't for the wind, Avde Lehu Sama Vechai, could have lived in many cases, and it was the wind that brought him down. Rabbi Chanina Omar Zu Tzina, that the Kol Choili, the Makapash, which brings all sickness and ultimate death, is cold. So Omar Chanina, Hakol Bidei Shemaim Chutz Metzinim Pachim. Everything is Bidei Shemaim, but when it comes, but a person can avoid cold outside, and that's up to the person to avoid. Shnei it says in Mishlei, Tzinim Pachim, cold. I guess it means Tzinim Pachim, B'derech Ikesh, hides out on the way. Shomer Nafsha, someone who's careful for himself, Yirchak Mehem, should just watch out for the cold that are hiding in the way. So avoid cold, put on his jacket. So Tzinim Pachim, B'derech Ikesh, Shomer Nafsha, Yirchak Mehem, and that's what causes all sickness and maybe even death. Mehem. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina Omar Zu Tzoya, that the tzoya of the nose and of the ears is what causes all sickness. The Omar Mar Tzoyas Hachoitim Tzoyas Haoizin, these wastes, Ruban Kasha, most of them are unhealthy. The Mi'utan Yofe, only a small amount of them do any good, and they cause sickness. Rabbi, I guess they gather bacteria and disease in them, and that's where the disease sticks and affects the person. Rabbi Elazar Omar Zumar, it's the gallstone, the gall. So that's what causes all sickness, because Rashi says the gall is mara, from the lashon bitter, like toxic. Rashi, where we are in the Gemara up about 6 lines, Zumara, that's the gall. Sha'amarira Shabbat, the toxicity of it is Gedola. Gedila, Benovas. It grows and it spreads. Umispashetes, and it begidim ubeatzamos, throughout the body, in the sinews, and in the bones. So that's the gall. He says. So Vilama, Gemara says, Vilama, right. Again, Rabbi Elazar Omar Zumar, that's the goal, is the call Choyle. Tanya Nami Hachi, we have a brisa that says like this. Machola, the lashon for sickness, Zumara. The word machola means gall. Why do they call gall machola? Sickness. Shehi machola kol gufa shalada. That's what causes sickness to the whole body of the person. Another explanation of why mora is called machola. The veracher machola. The gematria is shishmoini v'shloisha. It's the 83. 83 shmonim v'shlosha chaloyim teluyim b'mara. There's 83 sicknesses which the gall causes. The kulan pashachris b'melech v'kiton shel mayim mibat losan. And in all of these 83, if a person has a good breakfast, like pas, sounds like it's dafka pas, with salt and with water, so then he can avoid all of these sicknesses. More goes into it. Tanar Rabbanim Yud Gimel Devarim Namru B'Pas Shachris. There's 13 things which Pas Shachris is known to take care of. Matzelis Min Hachama. It saves a person from the heat of the day, because if a person has satiated in the morning with bread, It gives him strength to withstand the difficulty of a hot sun beating down on him. The minatzina and also the being satiated in the stomach with food, with bread, helps him withstand a cold day. Minatzina, minazikin, and the winds that Shmuel spoke about. Minamazikin, and all the mazik, the spiritual things, he can also withstand those also. Kimas pesi, and it makes him wise, Rashi says, because he's calm. He's not worried about his hunger pains. It gives him yishuv das. He's able to absorb knowledge. Therefore, Rashi says, where we are in the Gemara up about 6 lines, kimas pesi, shidaito meyushevis, or like he's calm because he's not worried about satisfying his need for food. He's not like fasting. He's not be'inui. And he can learn. If he has a mishpat, he can be zoicha because he can explain himself well, because he can focus. Rashi zoicha b'din, the next Rashi, im yesh lo din, im chavero, daito miyusheves liyashev dvorav, to arrange his taina properly, the based in litain, logically. The Gemara says, lilmod Torah ulilamed, and he can learn and he can teach because of the same reason. Rashi says, lilmod ulilamed machmas yishuv adas, because he can think, he's focused. The Dvorav nishmoyim, people will listen to him because Rashi says librios. Next Rashi, librios sheyesh lo lev latiman, because he's speaking logically, because he's not worried about other things. He's just thinking and learning. The Talmudo, Miskayim, again, that also he helps him keep his learning, remember his learning, biyodo. The aim besoro mala hevel, and he doesn't have a lot of perspiration and smell because his body is satisfied with food, and it's not like working overtime, trying to compensate on the fact that it doesn't have food, maybe. Then his okek, leishto, when he desires his wife, because he's satisfied, he's already satisfied, his need for food is satisfied, now he desires his wife. He can focus on his wife. And because he focuses on his wife, when he leaves the house, he's already thinking about his wife. And he doesn't find himself in the street thinking about another woman because he started his day thinking about his wife. When a person thinks about his wife in the beginning, he continues to think about her and doesn't think about other ladies. The horeges kina, and it kills parasites in his stomach, tapeworms and other parasites, because his stomach is strong and is satisfied with food. That he doesn't walk around jealous of other people because he's satiated by his stomach is satiated, so he's not feeling that he's lacking all day long and that everyone has more than what he has. So he's not bekina, umachnis es ha'ava, and therefore, if he's not bekina, he's loving everybody and throughout his day. Amalei Rabba bar Mari. So Rabba said to Rabba bar Mari, Minoha Milso. Where do we know the following? To Omre Inshi, people say that Shisin Rehite Rahut. There are 60 people that can be runners, 60 fast runners. Below Motu Legavra Mitzafra Korach. They will not catch a person who ate breakfast like pas in the morning. The Amru Rabbanan said, also something similar. Hashkem Lachol Bikaitz. Person in the summertime should make sure to eat that breakfast because he has to be able to go out in the sunny, hot day. And that will help him during the hot day. In a hot day, Ubechoyref, he should also eat because he has to go out in the cold day. So he told him back because it was Rabbah that asked Rabba bar Mori, and then Rabba bar Mori answered back. We learn it from here. See, Lo, it's a pasuk in Yeshayahu. Lo yiravu, v'lo yitzamu. He won't be hungry or won't be thirsty. V'lo yakem shorav v'shomesh. And because he's not, you will see. Because he's not hungry and he's not, they learn it as a cause and effect. Because he's not hungry and thirsty, so this cold and the wind and the sun will not affect him. That's where they learn it from. Lo yar'i v'lo yitzamu v'lo yakim shora b'shemesh. Lo yakim shora b'shemesh. Why? Kevan delo yarvu v'lo yitzamu. They won't be affected by the heat and the cold because he wasn't hungry and thirsty. And then that's what Rava Bar Mori answered back. And then Rabbi asked him again, Omalei, At Amrat Li Hasam, you gave me this answer about this is the Makor, where we see that the breakfast helps the person in this way. But I have a different Makor. Amrat Li Hasam, Ve'ana Amina Lach Nahach. I'll tell you from a different pasuk we can learn it from. Because the pasuk says in Shmos, it says, Va'avadatem es Hashem Elokechem, and you will serve Hashem, uveirach es lachmacha, es meimecha. You'll serve Hashem, and then Hashem will bless your bread and your water. So that's what it brings down. So how do they darshan? V'avadatem es Hashem Elokecha. You'll serve Hashem. What does that mean? Zukri Yishma, tefillah. That means Kriyishma and davening. Veirach es lachmacha es meimecha, and then Hashem will bless your bread and your water. Zupas. That's eating right pas in the morning with water. Some say with wine, but if you don't have wine, with water is good enough. And after that, he eats. The next part, the last part of the pasuk says, and that all sicknesses will leave the person because he ate well, he was nourished well in the morning. He says, like this, a new union. It says, and a surveyor, land survey should not be lax in his measurements. He should take every measurement very seriously and don't think that small amounts of land are insignificant. Because even a small amount of land, a person can grow a valuable type of spice on it. It has value. Because every small piece of land you can still grow kurkma rishka, which is like an expensive spice, maybe kamin or some set these valuable spice. Omerle Rabbi Yehuda Rab Adam Mishucha Dalet Amos de Anigra Zalzel Bohu. That they used to take an irrigation canal from the main river and bring it over to the fields. The fields, there were several fields of different owners. They would bring this irrigation ditch and then they would run it along all the fields. So that between the fields that they plow and between the irrigation ditch, they would leave a space, and that would be a buffer where they wouldn't plow on that. They wouldn't cultivate that piece, even though it's owned by them. They would all donate it because it's beneficial to separate between the irrigation ditch and their fields, not to ruin the banks of the irrigation ditch. So they would leave that space. And that space they didn't cultivate anyway, so the estimator, the surveyor, didn't have to be so careful about it as long as it was a good width for a buffer. However, the bank below however, I guess the bank itself of the big river, where they used that they would walk along the bank with ropes and pull the rafts or the boats along the river with logs or whatever other types to bring it down the river. That had to be cleared in order to walk along the banks. So those were public property. So you're not supposed to, I guess they're saying that don't survey them at all, just leave them wide open because it's public. And you can't, if you wouldn't do it right, there's nobody that could be Michael you. So I guess he's saying, don't survey that, just leave it wide open. And Rabbi Yehuda, the time Rabbi Yehuda was the one who said it, and he's going according to his reasoning. The Omar Rabbi Yehuda, that Arba Amos the Anigra, the Bnei Anigra, that the 4 Amos of the irrigation canal is private property for the people who have those fields along that canal, and they could be Michael, but your you don't have to be medactic because nobody cultivates it anyway. So they're like Michael if it's not exact for each person because they don't use it anyway. They don't cultivate it. And the river, the bank of the river, the Nara, the Kuli Amma, that's owned by everybody. That's public property, and you can't, you'll never do it right. So you can't take away from the public because there's nobody there specifically that can be mindful of you. So you have to give it in a large area. Make sure it's always open for people to use. And we'll stop here.